Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Well, that was a busy political day yesterday. We had about 24 hours, at least it seemed it, of nonstop action from the moment we woke up to the moment we went to bed. So about 20 hours of nonstop political action. We're going to talk all about it. The breaking news this morning, of course, the pardons on the January 6th rioters. We're going to talk about that. Some other things that happened. As a matter of fact, that we won't be able to get to all of them. That's how busy yesterday was. I want to hear your opinion on the inauguration. It was interesting to have the double speech. So you realize the first speech was one of the longest in modern history. It was about, I think they said 29 minutes, just a little short of 30 minutes. And then he goes down to the overflow room and gives a 33-minute speech, which was clearly more off the cuff, starting by winning over the audience and saying, you look like a much better crowd, a younger, better-looking crowd than the first crowd I spoke to. In typical Trump fashion, you could tell he was having a ball yesterday. We're going to talk about it throughout the morning. We do have some other issues to get to as well, but let's first start with comments after yesterday's broadcast. First up, President Trump is a very personable man. I always loved it when he criticized, or I also loved it when he criticized Biden, who did not seem aware that he was being put down during his acceptance speech. This was very reminiscent of 2016 in the sense of, and it takes a lot of courage. You know, giving a speech, some people consider it their biggest fear, right? Giving a public speech, public address. But then he's giving a speech that is essentially criticizing everyone that is behind him, meaning the former presidents, former politicians in general, doing that while they are staring over his shoulder. And in this case, an even more intimate setting in the rotunda, where everybody looked like they were jam-packed in. So yes, it was a very, I mean, I do believe it was overall a unifying speech. And there's a piece that we may get to later on that says that the theory is that giving all these promises or making all these promises in the speech is exactly why people voted for him. And he sent out an email, his team, late yesterday saying promises made, promises kept. And it went through all of the promises he kept. And that is something that the media struggles to deal with because as he's making good on these promises, I guess they thought he was just saying it to get votes, forgetting what happened in 2016 where he did similar, where it was, hey, I made a promise, I'm going to keep that promise. So then they're outraged at him doing exactly what he said he would do. A comment from a different viewer early this morning. Watched most of the inauguration yesterday. Everything went well. I felt sorry for all the people that waited hours and hours in the cold. Yeah, I feel sorry for them, but it was known, keep that in mind, that it would not be an outside inauguration. So anybody that chose to go to the National Mall knew what they were getting into. Also, I'm sure there was the long waits to get into the arena. That I do feel bad. I'm not sure how long the waits were. I did see pictures with people all dressed up, and that was a fun event as well. Time-wise, you know, as someone, I guess in media, everything's down to the second, right? So I'm looking at this and saying, wait, Trump's still at the luncheon, which, by the way, the luncheon's now, it's like 3:40. Late lunch, I guess you could call it. And he's supposed to be at the arena, well, technically at 4, which was already pushed back because of that second 33-minute speech that he gave. So, yeah, time frame-wise, it was kind of a nightmare. The whole time, though, it seemed like he was finding opportunities to sign more documents. But I'll continue with what this viewer had to say. Loved him signing executive orders, then tossing the pens into the crowd. Yeah, boy, people were fighting for those pens, weren't they? Very WWE-esque, wasn't it? I was surprised to see him back at the White House signing more orders while doing a press conference, all while hundreds waited for his arrival at 3 inauguration parties. Glad for his due diligence on his promise to hit the ground running. And that is one of the, thank you, viewer, that is one of the major takeaways yesterday, that he did hit the ground running. That's why the media is kind of in a tizzy this morning, kind of in shock, not expecting so much to be done so quickly. We'll get to some of that. I'm sure there's things that we are going to miss, but we're going to try to do our best, our due diligence, to get to all the information that was breaking throughout the day. Some of the stories that were major stories at the beginning of the day kind of fading away by the time The last song was played at the inaugural ball, but not this story. A viewer saying yesterday, right as the show ended, why would Biden do all these pardons if they were not guilty? And that's a fair point. And now you saw even more pardons coming from the Biden administration with minutes left in his presidency. The media tried downplaying it. I heard them saying yesterday, watching the mainstream media outlets, which I was flipping back and forth all day to see their distaste. You would think they were attending a funeral. I think they were more jovial or seemed in better spirits at Carter's funeral than they were yesterday. But one of the things they said, because they were focusing on what Trump could do, which he ultimately did, which was on January 6th, he, and the pardons there and the commutations, it was interesting because again, we hear that he could do this. Oh, by the way, Biden early this morning had preemptive pardons. Oh, and some of his family members. Glancing over the family members. But yes, yesterday, Joe Biden issued an extraordinary slate of preemptive pardons for prominent critics of Donald Trump. Again, whatever you think of that. But what they also, as it gets buried further down in the article, he also issued pardons for members of his family, his brother James and Frank, his sister Valerie, and their respective spouses. Now, the media doesn't know how to cover this because they haven't covered the fact that Biden's brothers used his name in this pay-for-play, just like Hunter did. And so effectively, this erases any type of investigation, at least in Biden's thought, into what has been deemed family corruption cases. So the media doesn't know how to cover it. They also protect Biden's close family members and potentially establish a precedent the new president will use to protect his own allies from criminal prosecution. Quote, "My family has been subjected to unrelenting attacks and threats motivated solely by a desire to hurt me, the worst kind of partisan politics. Unfortunately, I have no reason to believe these attacks will end," Biden said in a statement released as the inauguration ceremony was underway at the U.S. Capitol. A number of Biden's family members had testified before a House oversight panel looking into accusations of influencing peddling. So again, this is something that the media not really sure how to cover, like the early days of the Hunter Biden laptop and when Hunter was taken to court and then they had to report on things that they had not reported on up until that point, almost giving a background story. Lawmakers were stunned. We're going to talk about what some of them had to say. I don't want to talk too much about this. Though I asked the question because there was a little bit of talk before yesterday that it may be a little different what Trump does with January 6th. You remember Vance said it too, that it was almost going to be a case-by-case basis. Well, one of the reporters I heard yesterday suggesting that they heard that Trump, because of these last-minute pardons by President Biden, he decided, okay, to heck with it. I'm gonna go all in on the January 6th pardons, and also the precedent that sets with Biden giving yet again a blanket pardon, in this case to more family members. One of the people though that it is kind of interesting that was left off the list of pardons when it comes to who they think Trump could go after, Jack Smith, which is interesting. If you're going to do a laundry list of who you think Trump is going to go after, Jack Smith, I would think, would be towards the top of that list. But no, his name, absent. Interesting. But as James Bovard says, Biden scorns the rule of law with last day pardons, especially for Dr. Fauci. And when it comes to Dr. Fauci, Rand Paul had an interesting point on this. He said, Anthony Fauci will forever be marked as the first government scientist to be preemptively pardoned for a crime. Paul, who is the chairman of the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, and who has been widely critical of Fauci and Fauci's handling and dealing with the coronavirus pandemic and the initial lab scenario, he said that Fauci will live in infamy, saying, if there was ever any doubt as to who bears responsibility for the COVID pandemic, Biden's pardon of Fauci forever seals that deal. As chairman of the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, I will not rest until the entire truth of this cover-up is exposed. Fauci's pardon will only serve as an accelerant to pierce the veil of deception. Anthony Fauci will go down in history as the first government scientist to be preemptively pardoned for a crime. Joe Biden will be remembered for using his last few weeks in office to shield his son from the law and protect himself and protect other family members. And that's why Boulevard mentions the family pardons, and they're beyond ripe. The exiting president declared that his relatives have been subjected to unrelenting attacks and threats motivated solely by a desire to hurt me, the worst kind of partisan politics. Solely? The U.S. Treasury Department has received at least 150 suspicious activity reports on Biden's kinfolk and their dubious dealings. The term Biden crime family is redundant. Also, this idea that it's his own people. Remember, he was in charge. His own people are going after him. So he's sounding very much like Trump when he talks about lawfare. But according to Boulevard, the most shocking pardon is the Fauci pardon. I personally think it's the Biden family, but he believes it's Fauci. Fauci's been widely accused of giving false testimony on Capitol Hill, and it would have been no stunner if Biden gave him a get out of congressional lies free pass. But the now ex-president went further, giving a blanket 10-year whitewash, one that rivals Hunter Biden's. Quote, full and unconditional pardon for any offenses against the United States which he may have committed or taken part in during the period of January 1st, 2014 through the date of his pardon, arising from or in any manner related to his service as director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, a member of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, or the White House COVID-19 response team, or as chief medical advisor to the president. That presumably covers any funding, illicit or licit, that Fauci helped deliver to the Wuhan Institute or other laboratories that engaged in risky gain of function or bioweapons research. Wow, so he is off the hook for reckless research in China, which, thanks to a lab break, may have resulted in 7 million dead around the world. What of the distress suffered by the survivors of the millions who died thanks to the reckless research Fauci bankrolled in China, or those who suffered thanks to policies he supported, from an illegal vaccine mandate and the wrongful firing of scores of thousands of people who chose not to get vaxxed, to school shutdowns that blighted millions of childhoods, to the pointless lockdowns that led to soaring rates of suicide, alcoholism, and drug abuse, not to mention the pervasive cover-ups of other COVID frauds. How has any president in history done more than Joe Biden to destroy America's reputation as a nation of laws? That's the question that is being posed today. Even the last-minute pardons. Well, we're going to talk about it when we come back because I'm already running late and I got a lot of comments coming in. Keep them coming in. We're not going to talk much more about Biden. I do want to get to the inauguration, some of the things that Trump's been doing in the last not even 24 hours. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs on a very chilly morning here on Market Street in Corning as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Let's go to some viewer comments. Good morning, Frank. Well, hey, good morning. What a great inauguration. Trump was down to earth, talking like he is one of us. Elon Musk was awesome, too. Let the golden age begin, said Trump. Yes, there's a lot of good lines in that speech. Also, there was something about J.D. Vance, the whole family. I'm so excited about J.D. Vance being the vice president. I think he's going to do a wonderful job. And you could tell he was having fun. You could see that Trump was having fun. How funny was it when Trump, in his speech, made sure to mention that it is now the Gulf of America? And Hillary laughed, and J.D., you could tell, was just having a ball with it. Just certain things in that speech that in a normal day would have been the biggest takeaway is just one of many takeaways. Ken writes, for the past 4 years, we've had no idea who was running the country. In the first few minutes of Trump's presidency, we have no question on who was running the country. That is for sure. Again, going back to the point I was making about the speech, there's not too many people that could give that speech in front of the exact people he's putting down. I was telling someone yesterday that basically what Trump did with that speech, to an extent, not to kind of some of the rambunctiousness, but made Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, the former presidents, Bill Clinton, Obama, George W. Bush, and their families, Hillary, made them all sit through a Trump rally. They were essentially at a kind of watered down Trump rally with what he was saying. So you can imagine if Harris had to sit at a Trump rally throughout the whole campaign season, that's exactly what that felt like. So yes, there is no question. I see a lot more comments come in. We're going to get to those. Wrapping up the discussion on Biden's last-minute pardons, even the left says it's not a good look. CNN's MJ Lee said, well, as it turns out, Anderson, there is another promise broken. That is exactly how he has ultimately decided to approach the justice system. This is a decision that is going to raise so many alarming questions about the legal precedents that this now sets. And it would have been really one of the very final acts for President Biden as a sitting president. Lee said earlier in the statement that this was another way the former president has tarnished his own legacy. CNN commentator and The View co-host, Alyssa Farah Griffin, argued during the discussion the pardon of the family members was, quote, much muddier than his last-minute pardons of Liz Cheney, General Mark Milley, and Anthony Fauci. Quote, it is just unseemly. Oh, this is, no, I'm sorry, her quote is further on. John King from CNN said, it is just unseemly. If you're going to do it, have the courage to do it in the light of day and explain it to the American people. It's a stain on his legacy to do it like this. We could have an argument about, is it necessary? Has Donald Trump promised retribution? Yes, he has. If you're the president of the United States who said the curse of Donald Trump was that he didn't respect democracy and didn't respect the norms, have the courage to look the American people in the eye and explain what you're doing. Yes, because he's destroying democracy, destroying the norms. And there's others, actually Ilhan Omar, I think it was Ilhan Omar, saying something similar yesterday, that it's one thing for a performer to be at the inauguration, but when you have politicians that have tried to put down Trump for 8 years now and call him the worst names in the book, and then you attend the inauguration, it's hypocritical. We may get to that a little bit later on. Last quote is from David Axelrod, saying the fact is that Trump has been saying this for a long time. That doesn't explain why in the last 10 minutes of your presidency, you slip a release out there. It just made the whole thing look tawdry. Sure did. Trump says that Biden pardoned the family members minutes before leaving office, so, quote, I couldn't speak about it at the inaugural address. Did you know what Biden, when I was making my speech, pardoned his whole family? The brother, the whole deal? He did it while I was speaking because that way I shouldn't speak about it. Or I couldn't speak about it. I was speaking. I didn't know he did it. I finished my speech. I said, sir, he pardoned his whole family. I said, oh, can I go back out there and talk about it? Somehow that wouldn't be very elegant. Our first lady would say, please don't do that. But we have plenty of time to talk about it, and we will. Okay. Also, FBI agents are outraged by Biden granting clemency to Leonard Peltier, who was convicted of killing 2 FBI agents. That's another one that kind of got lost in the weeds. Among the names granted clemency was longtime jailed Native American activist Leonard Peltier, who many say was America's longest-serving political prisoner after he was convicted in 1975 of allegedly killing 2 FBI agents on his property. You know this story well. This is a story that has gotten a lot of attention through the years. It's been speculated that he would be pardoned many times. It had not happened until Monday. Okay, by the way, wow, look at all these comments coming in. We're having a blast this morning. Thanks for joining us on the day after Inauguration Day edition of Frankly Speaking. Marco Rubio was confirmed as Secretary of State last night in a 99-0 vote. Now, that's because, if I'm not mistaken, Rubio, I know he has not formally resigned, so that must be him abstaining. So 99-0, Marco Rubio is now the Secretary of State. We also learned that the Senate Armed Services Committee panel has advanced Pete Hegseth's nomination to the full Senate. The vote was on a party line, with 14 Republicans voting to advance his nomination and 13 Democrats voting against it. Now, the meeting itself, the vote did take place behind closed doors. Senator Jim Banks said, I just voted to advance Pete Hegseth's nomination to the Senate floor. There is no time to waste. The Senate should confirm Hegseth now. We'll see when that actually is taken up by the Senate. Also, the Senate did pass the Laken-Riley Act with support from 12 Democrats. Now, this is the bill to take illegal aliens who have been arrested, charged, or convicted of crimes such as theft, burglary, shoplifting, or larceny into custody by the Department of Homeland Security. In a 64-35 vote, the U.S. Senate passed the Laken-Riley Act hours after President Trump was inaugurated. There's so many examples of, to use that term winning, that Donald Trump was involved in either directly or indirectly yesterday. Now, I know John Fetterman, who John Fetterman showed up at the inauguration. Did you see his outfit? It's one of the criticisms. I mean, he's still a Democrat, so there's some things you can point to and say, oh, I don't like this, I don't like that. I don't understand the need to dress so slovenly. But remember, they had to change the rules because he wanted to wear the same thing in the Senate. That was kind of a major story for a short period of time. But he showed up to the inauguration in essentially gym shorts and a hooded sweatshirt. But anyway, so the Laken-Riley Act did pass the Senate again, 64 to 35. All right. And Trump was winning before he even realized it, or before he even was sworn in. Scores of career State Department diplomats resigned before Trump's inauguration. This was coming out yesterday. Scores of senior career, so kind of the deep state, the swamp that Trump talks so often about, diplomats are resigning from the State Department effective at noon on Monday, yesterday, after receiving instructions to do so from President-elect Donald Trump's aides. The forced departures aimed at establishing a decisive break for the Biden administration will result in an exodus of decorated veterans of the foreign services, including John Bass, the Undersecretary for Management and Acting Undersecretary for Political Affairs. I'm not going to go through everybody. All right, we're going to go through. Oh, and speaking, kind of piggybacking off of that, I know this was a big story during the afternoon. A portrait of retired General Mark Milley, the former chair of the Joint Chief of Staff, who has feuded with Trump publicly. That portrait was taken down in the Pentagon on Monday, and they tried to make a big deal out of it. I'm not going to try to tell you which mainstream media I was watching because I was flipping around a lot, but I tried to watch what you would perceive as non-Trump outlets, just like I did on election night. And they were trying, this was going to be the first big scandal that, what does this say? Erasing history. All those portraits are up. This is wrong. I said, well, if this is your first controversy, buckle up. This is the first time you're outraged. Buckle up. The portrait, which had just been unveiled on January 10th, hung in the Joint Chiefs hallway next to those of other former chairs. The news of the portraits being taken down was first reported by several journalists who posted photographs on the social platform X. So it was up there for not quite a month. All right, let's take a break. We're going to try to read as many of your comments as we can. Trump did pardon nearly all the January 6th defendants yesterday. That is one of the big topics. We'll discuss that. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking, just getting warmed up. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. I'm your host, Frank Acom. Thank you for joining us. So many comments coming in. And I've got to say, we've got eclectic viewers, meaning that there's not all just one opinion, not one side to the issue. And I do really appreciate that. For example, here's a prime example of how I think, Frankly Speaking, offers something for everyone. The first viewer saying we watched Trump sign an executive order pardoning 1,600 patriots incarcerated for January 6th. The next comment I received clearly from a different viewer is, how can Trump criticize Biden about pardons while Trump pardons 1,500 criminals from January 6th? So very different opinion. I would say, to flip that question around, and I think that's why the media is somewhat upset by Joe Biden's last-minute pardons these last couple of weeks, but specifically yesterday, is because it does make it more difficult for them to criticize Trump for use of pardons. And some were speculating yesterday, and again, I want to highlight, I wasn't watching what you would consider conservative outlets at all. And they were saying, did Trump make the decision to go maybe even more forceful with the pardons for the January 6th rioters? Was he more aggressive than he may have been? Because J.D. Vance kind of signaled last week or the week before kind of not a weakening stance, but a case-by-case basis. So the thought is, did Trump make that ultimate move because of the last-minute pardons by Biden of the January 6th committee? I think that's something worth thinking about, because it was kind of a different conversation than was being had last week. But President Biden, oh wow, got to get out of that habit after 4 years. President Trump pardoned nearly all January 6th defendants. I saw pardon and president, and I got ahead of myself. President Donald Trump pardoned nearly all January 6th defendants yesterday after promising at his inaugural parade to sign an executive order on the matter. Sitting at the Resolute desk in the Oval Office, Trump signed off on the release of more than 1,500 charged with crimes stemming from the January 6, 2021 attack. The order requires the Federal Bureau of Prisons to act immediately on receipt of the pardons, and we saw some video and some photos of that happening. Oh, wait, I didn't read any of the other. Oh, yes, that's okay. Yeah, I know the viewer who said 1,600 met 1,500. I'm sorry, I should have corrected that. Hold on, I'm going to get the other comments. I'm sorry, I got caught up with those two different ones. He said, tonight I'm going to be signing on the January 6th hostages' pardons to get them out. I'm going to the Oval Office and we'll be signing pardons for a lot of people. Those pardons, well, you've heard all about it to this point. I'm not going to go through each individual name. Trump previously promised that he would be acting very quickly on his first day in office to pardon the so-called, what he calls, hostages. Former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, called Trump's pardons shameful and said to remember the courage of law enforcement heroes who ensured that democracy survived. Quote, the president's actions are an outrageous insult to our justice system and the heroes who suffered physical scars and emotional trauma as they protected the Capitol, the Congress, and the Constitution, Pelosi tweeted. It is shameful that the president has decided to make one of his top priorities the abandonment and betrayal of police officers who put their lives on the line to stop an attempt to subvert the peaceful transfer of power. All right, we're going to tell you about some more. And again, Trump issues 1,500 pardons for January 6th defenders. We could talk more about this. This seems to be a hot topic. When asked about his movie, he said, I will say this. They've been in jail for a long time already. I see murderers in this country get 2 years, 1 year, maybe no time. So they've already been in jail for a long time. These people have been destroyed. What they've done to these people is outrageous. Even people that were aggressive, and in many cases, I believe they happen to be outside agitators. But what do I know? But I think they were. I think they were outside agitators. They were outside agitators, and obviously the FBI was involved. So the Justice Department criminally charged 1,583 people in connection with the riot, which broke out after Trump. You know all about that. Okay, let's go to some other viewer comments, and we can talk more about that if you want, but that's just kind of at face value. That's what it is. Waves coming in. Here we go. Comment from a viewer with a wave. Thank you. What a day yesterday was. I woke up this morning saying I'm proud to be an American once again. Were you saying it, or was the song stuck in your head because we heard it a lot yesterday? Lee Greenwood did a great job. What did you think? And I'm just joking, of course. You raise a very good point, but boy, we heard that song, Proud to be an American, a lot yesterday. What a day yesterday was. I woke up this morning saying proud to be an American once again. I thought Lee Greenwood, all the performances I saw, I didn't stay up for a lot of the inaugural balls, excuse me. I did watch, of course, all the inauguration and then the weird second inauguration. Not weird in the sense that you don't normally get that kind of odd, but a really good speech there too. When it comes to Carrie Underwood's performance, what did you think? There's been some pushback on her from the political standpoint. And then yesterday, of course, there was the technical issue, which was very uncomfortable, I'm sure, for her and many people in the room. And she just sat there, or stood there, waiting for the music to start. And then she did it a cappella. I would say, the crystal chords during the telethon did better. But other than that, I thought she did a really good job. I thought under pressure, I liked it. I liked how it sounded with the people joining in. I know it was probably not ideal for her, but I thought, boy, in a moment like that with the pressure on and really nothing you could do, I thought it turned out really well. But your thoughts? Agree? Disagree? I'd love to hear. Trump rescinded 78 of Biden's executive actions with the stroke of a pen yesterday night. Covers an array of actions Biden took throughout his term, ranging from ending diversity, equity, and inclusion policies to the southern border and climate. Trump said in a statement, I can undo almost everything Biden did through executive order. And on day one, much of that will be undone. So 78 of Biden's executive actions erased, essentially, with a stroke of a pen. You had the EV mandate. We're going to get to some of them, some of the specifics. I don't want to get too much in the weeds on it, but President Trump signed a series of orders on energy policy that he said would tackle inflation after consumer costs soared 22% during President Biden's 4 years in office. And later on, I couldn't get the whole article because CNN is now based on subscription if you read so many articles, and that's fine. But they said that some of these mandates, some of these executive orders that Trump put in, I don't have the headline right in front of me, we'll get to it later on, but tricky as the economy is booming right now. Presenting, again, the narrative that everything is good with the economy. The biggest thing and factor for inflation is energy. They screwed up my energy policy, Trump told reporters. We're going to make a lot of money from energy. We have more than anybody else. So keep in mind, on top of just casual conversations, Trump gave a 30-minute speech, well, 29 minutes. Then that second kind of rogue inaugural address, 33 minutes. Then you had, I don't know how long the speech was at the arena. And then you had a 47-minute Oval Office news conference yesterday. Trump declared a national emergency. He's voiced, but he's good at giving lots of rallies. Trump declared a national emergency on energy aimed at unlocking different authorities that will enable our nation to quickly build again to produce more natural resources. Another one of Biden's orders lifts Biden's restrictions, or another one of Trump's orders lifts Biden's restrictions on drilling for oil in Alaska, including the now former president's 2023 restriction on Arctic Ocean drilling and his ban announced this month on drilling off the U.S. coastline, including the Bering Sea. The order will facilitate the unleashing of Alaska's potential as an energy reservoir for the entire nation. As you know, Trump vowed in his inaugural address to usher in a golden age of America by taking a sledgehammer to the regulatory state and ramping up energy production. And it was one signature after another. That's another question you'd ask. How many times did he have to sign his signature yesterday? Oh, he withdrew from the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement. See, the reason the media is so upset about this, even to the point with the January 6th rioters being pardoned, they're so upset over this because, as a rule, candidates aren't supposed to make good on their promises. This is one of the things that frustrated them back in 2016 because they saw what he was saying at rallies and going, boy, that's out there. Boy, he's never going to be able to do that. And then he did. So that's what drives them crazy on the coverage yesterday, that he's making good on his promises. And I received, like I said, an email, I think it was from the press sector of his administration, that was promises made, promises kept. And I think it printed out at 8 pages, and it was just line by line of all the things he promised and all the things he's done already. He even signed, and I don't know, this could get some pushback, but he signed that TikTok executive order to give the parent company a lifeline to have 75 more days to find a buyer for the platform, saying that without his signature, it's worthless if I don't approve it. So your thoughts on that as well. We are really cooking. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Keep those comments coming in. We'll try to get to as many as we can, and we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. We have so many comments. I swear I'm not going to get distracted this time. We're going to go through all of them. Here we go. First up, Ken writes, now we have unequivocal proof that the Biden crime family enriched themselves by selling access to America. This is in reference to Biden pardoning his family moments before he was no longer president. Only God knows what damage they did to the country in exchange for millions of dollars of ill-gotten gain. The only one he didn't pardon was himself. I hope Pam Bondi capitalizes on that fact and does an in-depth investigation into Biden's involvement and charges him with treason. Presidential immunity can't save him because he was selling access as the VP under one of his handlers, Obama. Thanks, Ken. Comment from a different viewer. Biden essentially dumped gas on his dumpster fire on the way out of the White House. Kind of like an Oprah move, but instead of giving away cars, he gave away pardons. Everyone gets a pardon. Yeah, that was interesting. Well, it was very interesting, kind of like what David Axelrod said, that it tarnishes his legacy, because look at how tawdry it was. Because there's a reason why he did it just moments before Trump was sworn in. You don't do that if it's a pardon you're extremely proud of, right? Comment from a different viewer. Drill, baby, drill, and let's go to Mars. America first. And is going to be the best. Yeah, the Mars thing, boy, Elon Musk loved that in the speech, didn't he? Pumping his fist. That was interesting. Not a surprise, just interesting. Comment from a different viewer. I think people now have something to look forward to. A sense of security and anticipation of a better life. Go Trump. Thank you. Do you know if Hochul is going to work with President Trump, including tossing illegals from our country, or I guess from the state you would mean? No. If you take her at her own word, if you recall, Governor Hochul gave that press conference with Letitia James the day after Trump won election, which essentially said she wasn't going to work with Trump. We already know they're putting mechanisms in to try to stop the border czar from going into the sanctuary city, going into these encampments, if you will. So, no, I think if we just take her at her word, no, she isn't going to work with President Trump. Comment from a different viewer. I'd like to see what the stock market does today, seeing Trump is president. Yeah, that's always kind of an interesting metric. Thank you for all these great comments. Trump. First, let's bring it up. Trump revokes the security clearance for John Bolton. Now, Dennis Miller used to call John Bolton the nuclear walrus. If you look at it, if you know what he looks like, you'll understand that joke. Citing Bolton's book penned in the wake of his White House departure, Trump accused him of being reckless with sensitive information. Interesting. Now, one of the focuses early on in the day yesterday was after Trump got sworn in, that CBP One app was immediately erased, if you will. Migrants waiting to enter the U.S. using former Joe Biden's CBP One app broke down in tears after their appointments were canceled the moment President Trump took office. Now, this was great. This was kind of Media 101, the idea if it bleeds, it leads. They saw the various migrants weeping over cancellations, and I saw one specifically where there were more cameras there around that person crying than I think there were at the inauguration, because this is the avenue they're going to go down. One of the media, one of the quote-unquote journalists were saying, well, this was a legal way for people to get amnesty. Well, it doesn't work that way. It was still open borders. It was just you had to go through an app. I mean, it was very confusing, them trying to defend it. The app, which hundreds of thousands of migrants have used to enter the country since Biden introduced it 2 years ago, went dark at noon, the very moment Trump was sworn in. Migrants were no longer able to make immigration appointments, and the app showed a message that an outstanding interview date would be canceled if they had an outstanding interview date. Footage taken by a Washington Post reporter across the border captured the anguish some migrants faced upon learning their shot at making it into the U.S. had vanished, including one woman whose appointment was scheduled for just an hour after the app's closure. That was the photo and the video that they've been showing throughout the last day over and over. But what's interesting, whatever you think about the app, the timing, if you had an interview that was scheduled for an hour after Trump got sworn in, you probably had to see the writing on the wall. Trump also issued an executive order yesterday defining sex as male and female. These are sexes that are not changeable. What we're doing today is defining that it is the policy of the United States to recognize two sexes, male and female. These are sexes that are not changeable, and they are grounded in fundamental and fundamental reality. Anyway, the policies are included in an executive order, one of dozens that Trump signed yesterday after becoming president. The order prevents people from changing their sex on U.S. passports, which currently allow for holders to choose male, female, or X, and will attempt to ban medical transition treatment for prisoners. Both new policies are likely to face litigation. Okay. Yeah, we're really moving along here, but we got to take another short break. Keep those comments coming in. What were your thoughts yesterday? We are going to get to not just what Trump's been accomplishing so far, but also about the inauguration itself, because that obviously was historic for numerous reasons. What did you think of Carrie Underwood's performance? Just out of curiosity. We do have some statements from the media, some various politicians. I do know in my heart, maybe that's overstating it, I now am convinced, well, let's say my gut, I am now convinced after watching the whole day's coverage on various mainstream media outlets, they have not learned their lesson. They have not done the soul searching. They are very much Trump 2016 coverage all over again. But your thoughts, I would love to hear it. But we got to take a break because I hear the courting whistle. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security and Horsets. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. All right. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, looking at some more comments. Comment from a viewer: this is absolutely outrageous in terms of the pardons. If people can't see what this is, now there's seriously something wrong with them. Is this even legal? And if no one is above the law, Pam Bondi has every right to investigate this. And if everything was deleted on the January 6th committee, this has to be unlawful, doesn't it? And someone needs to be held accountable. Thank you very much. Comment from a different viewer: did you see where Biden didn't know which way to go after his farewell speech? He asked his wife and she looked disgusted. Yes, I did actually happen to see that. That was awkward. Absolutely. A comment from a different viewer. I think Carrie kept her cool, and the a cappella performance was beautiful. Good for her. I agree. I know that must have been very awkward having the music go out. I thought she handled it wonderfully because there's no way. She's a big enough star. She has to perform. It's not as if they're going to say, okay, moving along here. So she had to perform, and I thought she did it the best possible way that she could. Okay, Trump withdrew from WHO, completing the major conservative wish list item. So we are no longer in the World Health Organization. That's a big one, Trump quipped. Critics have accused WHO of botching the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Trump also decried the U.S. spending for the organization. World Health ripped us off, he later said. Trump also predicted in that, I guess this must have been at the press conference. There was so much coverage of Trump yesterday that it blends together. Trump predicted Denmark will cave on Greenland. Greenland is a wonderful place. We need it for international security. And I'm sure Denmark will come along. I think it's costing them a lot of money to maintain it. The people of Greenland are not happy with Denmark. I think they're happy with us. They can't maintain it. He also signed an executive order declaring Mexican cartels foreign terrorist groups, and he had mentioned that in his speech. And he also didn't rule out military force when asked. He said stranger things have happened when asked by a reporter about using military force or sending troops to Mexico to target the cartels. And then he joked, because remember, his well-worn promise during the campaign was to end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. So when he was asked about that, he said, well, this is one half a day. I have another half a day left. We'll see. He revoked Biden's oil and gas drilling restrictions. And I think this is an important one that kind of got glanced over because he accomplished so much yesterday. Restoring Cuba to the terror list. You recall last week we reported to you that Biden had taken Cuba off the terror list. Among them, of the 78 Biden executive orders that Trump essentially erased with a swipe of a pen a couple hours after being sworn in, among them are an order from January 6th that banned offshore oil and gas drilling along most of America's coast, an area larger than the states of Alaska and Texas combined, and more than 6 times the area of the state of California. Another overturned order from January 14th removed Cuba from the list of state sponsors of terrorism, where it kept company with Iran, North Korea, and Syria. We also, did you watch when Trump discovered the letter from former President Biden in the Resolute desk? Trump was in the process of signing one of his many executive orders after returning to the White House when Peter Doocy asked if President Biden left him a letter. He said, he may have. Don't they leave it in the desk? I don't know. Thank you, Peter. It could have been in here for years before we found this thing. There is a fascination with that letter, isn't it? A lot of the coverage yesterday, when there wasn't a lot to report on, especially before the inauguration, other than, watching people come into the hall and, their outfits and things like that, they kept going on and on about the letter. I think it's because there's intrigue there. They don't know what's said. It's normally kept quiet. Yesterday, Trump joked that he should open it up right there and read it out loud, then realizing, wait a minute, maybe I better read it first. You never know what it's going to say. But there does seem to be a fascination, and I get it. I mean, it is kind of an interesting tradition started by Ronald Reagan. But boy, they really want to know what's in that letter. Probably in this scenario, because they're hoping that Biden may have went after Trump in some way. So Trump teased everyone in the room by suggesting they all read the letter together before pulling back the reins. Well, maybe I'll read it first and then make that determination. Happy to help with the passing of the torch, Doocy said. Saying, hey, I don't even know if we would have found this for years. When we come back, we're going to read more of your comments. So many comments. Thank you for being so jazzed up this morning. We're going to talk about the inauguration itself. Fox News put together what they believe to be the top 5 Inauguration Day moments. We're also going to take a look at some of the things that Trump had to say, while others, because this is important, as I had mentioned, I don't believe the media has learned its lesson after watching the coverage yesterday. So we're going to show you some examples of that as well later on in the second hour of Frankly Speaking, which is coming right up. So that's why I don't want to run too late. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. That's our roof cam on this chilly morning. The roof cam is brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, somehow unbelievably almost wrapping up hour number 1, wherein I feel like we haven't covered nearly enough. Let's get to viewer comments. From Ken saying, I'm hopeful that the executive order eliminating birthright citizenship doesn't get thrown out by the Supreme Court. This only in America policy has been instrumental in bringing hundreds of thousands of people into the country over the years who wouldn't have been legally admitted except for the fact that a pregnant woman got here illegally and had the baby on American soil. I heard many years ago that hundreds of well-to-do pregnant Chinese women planned vacations to America and lied on their visas stating that they were not expecting while in America, when they were actually, that was their plan all along. These anchor babies give legal status to their extended families to come to America and stay. Yeah, there'll be a lot of fights. They're prepared for this. I was watching a clip last night on one of the many clips, so don't quote me from where, but that's one of the things, because Trump, learned his lesson in 2016 on some things. He was not a politician. Learned some of what he needed to do, and one of those is to be ready for all the lawsuits and to be prepared. Another comment from a different viewer saying, good morning, Frank. Well, hey, good morning. The woman who said she had an immigration appointment 1 hour later was likely lying. It was Martin Luther King Day. All those offices would have been closed. Good point. When all the cameras were trained on her, and it was very emotional, and not downplaying that, she was very, very emotional. But when you saw all the media laser-like focused on her, it was, well, again, very reminiscent of 2016 and how the media were always looking for that optic to take a dig at Trump, and that's what that was. But continuing with that viewer's comment, God bless President Trump and God bless America. We have a chance to survive. Thank you. Yes. A very patriotic day yesterday, wasn't it, at the inauguration? It is nice to watch the pomp and circumstance as well. Something about the tradition. Comment from a different viewer. I think Trump's enthusiasm to get started is so refreshing, and it was the most transparent I've ever seen. If only I had that kind of energy, the day started early. He was nonstop all day. I've got to say, and I mentioned this to others, listen, I get up early, but Trump does too. I mean, he's probably up way before me. I didn't even make it to the various inaugural balls because I went to bed. And he was still giving press conferences, things I didn't even know were going to happen up until those celebrations. So how they did it all day, like all of them. I know he was joking with Melania at that second inaugural address, joking about the heels that she was wearing, that her legs were killing her. Well, they had a long way to go. That was definitely a long day for anybody involved. Even, obviously, she was done about halfway through the day, but even Senator Klobuchar, Amy Klobuchar, that she was a part for the whole ride, and they made a big deal about that. But yes, I don't know where they get the energy. Him, Vance, their wives. Comment from a different viewer. Oh, hey, this is nice. Love your show. I recently moved from Florida after 20 years. Wow. I've never seen a show like this. I hope that's good. No, you said you loved the show, so I appreciate that. Yes, since you're new to the program, that's the idea, is to get the community involved and to have these conversations. And as you may have seen at the beginning of the program, it is on both sides. We can't read all the comments due to time, but we try to do our best, and that's why we appreciate all the outreach and such. We have such astute and brilliant viewers that send such great comments. That I think it does make the show unique. So thank you for that comment. I'd love to know why you moved from Florida. That most people are doing the opposite, moving from New York to Florida. Most people are making the plans to anyway. And by the way, speaking of that gives me, I'm out of time, but it gives me a good segue just to quickly say, don't forget that Governor Hochul's budget comes out today. If you want some good entertainment reading, and just have some good entertainment after yesterday's excitement and ups and happiness, read the budget, and you can erase all of yesterday's good work. We got to take a break. Stay with us. Hour number 1 in the books. Hour number 2, moments away. Hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. I'm your host, Frank Acom. So glad that you would join us this morning. We've got a comment from a viewer. Good morning, Frank. Well, hey, good morning. The relief felt cannot be put into words. This is Fred, by the way. Thank you, Fred, for writing in. Now that the border is closed, all the NGOs, non-government organizations, that have enabled migrant crossing multiple countries can redirect their funds to other purposes. I'm sure most Catholics didn't want their donations to Catholic charities, various Catholic charities, being spent in that manner. The government funding given to those bloated NGOs to facilitate migration was criminal. Thank you, Fred. Now, Fox put together some of their takeaway moments from Inauguration Day. First, that Trump ushers in the golden age of America while, I don't know if I would agree with this term necessarily, bashes Biden-Harris administration in inaugural speech. I guess you could say that. The golden age of America begins right now. From this day forward, our country will flourish and be respected again all over the world. And I know I keep saying this, and you saw the speech. I don't have to go through it, though. I do like that line, January 20th, 2025 is Liberation Day. So we don't have to go through all that because you watched the inaugural address yourself. But again, the courage that takes, I don't know too many people that could do that, to give a speech where everybody you are, to use Fox's term, bashing, looking at you right now behind you. I know you're president of the United States, but at the same time, it's got to feel a little awkward. Next up, they liked the fashion. That was a big topic yesterday. First Lady Melania Trump donned a weather-appropriate outfit for her husband's second inaugural ceremony. Melania was pictured wearing, I'm not going to read all the names. If that's your thing, you already know. Many saying she looked elegant and classy. The least or worst dressed was Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman. He was wearing gray gym shorts, a dark hoodie, and sneakers as he arrived at Capitol Hill. They also, wow, their moments are a lot different than my moments. Trump's awkward kiss attempt with Melania when he was leaning in and couldn't get it because of the hat. I guess that's a big takeaway. And Carrie Underwood sings a cappella following the musical mishap. Underwood was welcomed with a round of applause as she was introduced. Once on stage, Underwood patiently waited for the instrumentals to start, which ultimately never came. That's when she said, "If you know the words, help me out." Before launching into an a cappella version of the song, members of the audience, including the former president and vice president, joined in singing the song. I thought she did a great job, especially being put in that situation. It was a very stressful situation. I know the media is trying to make a big deal about the fact that Trump did not place his hand on the Bible for the oath of office. That ceremony was so rushed. I mean, you think about how much pomp and circumstance there is in that whole event. All of a sudden, John Roberts is running up there like they have seconds to go before it has to be done. So he was focused on repeating back to what Justice Roberts was saying in the oath, and wasn't thinking that Melania, who was over his shoulder, had the Bibles. Instead of placing his hand on the Bibles, Trump stood with his left arm down by his side as he raised his right hand for the oath of office. Many blamed Chief Justice Roberts for the rushed feel. Now the media is trying to say, is this a departure from presidential norms? Because Chief Justice Roberts started the oath before Melania got there, so they just went with it. She got there about halfway through, but by that time, Trump was already doing it that way and just continued, said one user. Chief Justice Roberts has a history of messing up, we'll put it that way, the administrating of the presidential oath. He rushed it today, and they didn't even have the Bible or the family in place. Yeah, you could see the whole family trying to get in the background. In Obama's first inauguration, he mumbled through parts of it, and they actually had to redo it in the Oval Office a few hours later to make sure it took. Oh, I forgot about that. That's true. Because it was mumbled through so much that they said, well, that's not, I forgot all about that. That it was basically we have to do a redo just to make sure that there's no question of whether or not you actually took the oath. So I was kind of surprised by the pick of John Roberts, because I don't think he has to pick John Roberts. I like J.D. Vance picking Kavanaugh, though I do have to say I would pick Clarence Thomas like Pence did. But at the same time, Kavanaugh, not a bad pick. That was just interesting choice to me. Most people didn't care that much about the outrage. I don't think it matters much. Trump is obviously a Christian, and he still chose for the Bible to be there. They don't just bring a Bible. You can swear on it or not. If he chose the Bible to be present, that means he's swearing upon it. One Twitter user saying, I am evangelical. What does it really mean anyway? Matthew 5 says not to swear an oath at all, but instead let your yes be yes and your no be no. Past presidents have sworn on the Holy Bible and betrayed their oath. I care about President Trump doing what he says. Interesting point. But yes, a lot of people pointing, specifically Jonathan Turley saying the Chief Justice moved a tad too quickly before Trump could put his hand on the Bible. Roberts previously had an embarrassing moment with Obama. On that occasion, Obama had to redo the oath. Right up, the timing was off. However, there was no need for a redo. Many just continuing to say he rushed the oath and messed it up yet again. In his speech, Donald Trump said, and I thought this was a powerful moment, was saved from death by God to bring back the golden age of America. I thought that was that's probably the biggest takeaway for me in the speech. The whole speech was wonderful, but I just thought that line was very moving. The journey to reclaim our republic has not been an easy one. I felt and believe even more now that my life was saved for a reason. I was saved by God to make America great again. It was at points like that when he said, make America great again, like that. And that's what I thought was, he basically put Biden and Harris in a situation where, and the Clintons and Barack Obama and the Bushes, in a situation where they were attending a Trump rally. But this should come as no surprise because he did the same thing in 2016 where he is, to again use Fox's term, bashing the former presidents, and they're all right behind him. That minister, a lot of people focused on the Detroit pastor, Lorenzo, I don't know how to pronounce it, Soul? I can't remember how they pronounced it, but giving an impassioned prayer, really nice prayer. But the big takeaway from that was, Heavenly Father, he said, we're so grateful that you gave our 45th and now our 47th president a millimeter miracle. A lot of people praising the job that he did. Mentioning, again, Carrie Underwood singing America the Beautiful a cappella. Your thoughts on that, as there was obviously a technical glitz, trying that, I don't know, tongue tie this morning. It is interesting how it's very reminiscent of, coverage that they have for, the Royals in a way, because so much focus was on what people were wearing, those type of little things. Now, we joked earlier about having God Bless the USA stuck in your head all day. Well, Lee Greenwood sang it at the beginning and numerous times throughout the weekend, I should say, and yesterday. I thought the person who sang the national anthem, Christopher Machio, did a really good job with that as well. So your thoughts on that? We know that Carrie Underwood had been getting some grief in the past by kind of farther left media outlets. Again, I do have to say, after watching various outlets yesterday with all the coverage, they have not done their soul searching. They have not done wait a minute, how can we be better? It was very, not only political, but anti-Trump political. So I'd be curious to see where you watched. Also, let's see. Yeah, I thought this was good. Carolyn Thayer said Carrie Underwood triumphs at Trump inauguration after the musical mishap. She shook the president and vice president's hand at the end. As one person put it on Twitter, now that is a flex. Imagine being so talented that when technology fails, you just go, fine, I'll do it live, and crush it a cappella in front of thousands. Well, I would argue millions at home. But Carrie Underwood doesn't need auto-tune. Auto-tune probably takes notes from her, an impassioned fan wrote. This pretty much sums up the spirit of America. When you're faced with a problem, you don't stop. You keep moving ahead, proudly. Kudos to Carrie Underwood. Well done. She just demonstrated Trump's words. We will overcome any challenge and win. Yes, Senator Fetterman's hoodie and shorts raised some eyebrows at the inauguration. These are kind of the other little takeaways. Hillary Clinton laughed at Trump announcing the Gulf of Mexico. I love that he's doing that. My proudest legacy will be that of a peacemaker and unifier. That's why I want to be a peacemaker and a unifier. I'm pleased to say that as of yesterday, one day before I assumed office, the hostages in the Middle East are coming back home to their families. America will reclaim its rightful place as the greatest, most powerful, most respected nation on earth, inspiring the awe and admiration of the entire world. A short time from now, we are going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, and we will restore the name of a great president, William McKinley, to Mount McKinley, where it should be and where it belongs. And then he went, and I guess the president of Panama, not happy with the comments that Trump made. about Panama Canal going back to us. I mean, the United States, think of it, spent more money than ever spent on a project before and lost 38,000 lives in the building of the Panama Canal. We have been treated very badly from the foolish gift that should have never been made. And Panama's promise to us has been broken. The purpose of our deal and the spirit of our treaty has been totally violated. American ships are being severely overcharged and not treated fairly in any way, shape, or form, and that includes the United States Navy. And above all, China is operating the Panama Canal, and we didn't give it to China, we gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back. We're going to tell you what some of the comments are from yesterday, but most importantly, I want to hear your comments. Stay with us. We've got to take a short break. This is, Frankly Speaking, WYDC TV, Big Fox. We will be right back. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. To the viewer that commented who won the college football championship, Ohio State Buckeyes defeated the Notre Dame Fighting Irish 34-23. So the Ohio State Buckeyes are your national champions. So there you go. We're playing Google this morning. So many comments. Okay, I don't know. I'm going to read some more of these comments, but I didn't get a chance to go through all of them, so let's start with a few. I'm sure The View will say Melania refused her husband's attempted kiss because he didn't ask first. You could very well be. They'll probably there's going to be a lot of things they make a big deal out of that you may not even realize happened yesterday. So, now this viewer, a different viewer, said they rushed to get him sworn in by noon, which is traditional. Well, I know there's that, but this seemed an extra rush. I mean, that you can wait the few seconds to have the family come around and Melania come around. So I do think it was a little more rushed than normal, like Jonathan Turley said. A comment from a different viewer. I'm wondering if Greenland could become a territory, as I believe Puerto Rico still is, whereby they would maintain their own governance and get protection from the United States. Maybe, is that the way we'd want to go? Because I know there's a lot of tax, they get a lot of tax money, but not a lot coming back. I don't know. That's a good point. Okay, comment from a different viewer. Oh, this is from Ken. Why would the legacy media ever learn their lesson? The legacy media, talking heads, have parlayed their TDS narratives, Trump derangement syndrome, into millions of dollars a year. They wouldn't be rewarded so handsomely if they weren't doing the left's bidding as the heads of the Democrat Party. Yeah, there's still a point to be made, and I don't disagree with you. So let me be clear. But they're not making as much as they used to. I don't really think their business model is working the way they think it is. Yes, they are making a lot, and specifically the anchors and the like. But as you saw with MSNBC, with the cut and pay for some, that it's not as popular as it once was. Love Carrie Underwood. You could tell Trump was a little aggravated about the situation. Yeah, you could. I was thinking the whole time when that was happening that in Trump's head, he's just chomping at the bit to start signing the executive orders. I thought that until then he goes down to Emancipation Hall and gives another, this time 33-minute, off-the-cuff inaugural address. Okay, according to this viewer, the 1950 case verdict versus U.S. accepting a pardon is a mission of guilt. Well, thank you. I did not know that. Okay. Oh, here's a comment. Not a comment, but here's a statement being made, and I thought it was only right to share this with you. So many comments coming in, by the way. Keep them coming in, please. But I thought it was only right to share this with you. This is from Congressman Nick Langworthy about yesterday's inauguration, saying, today, our 47th president, Donald J. Trump, made a promise to America. We'll be greater, stronger, and far more exceptional than ever before. He outlined an agenda that will make America safer, more prosperous, and more secure for the next generation. He reiterated his commitment to putting America first and sent a loud and clear message to the millions of Americans who quietly and dutifully go to work every day to propel our country. That this is their White House. With a bold and ambitious agenda, he's inspiring America to reach our greatest heights. I couldn't be prouder to represent Western New York and the Southern Tier during this historical moment in history, as we work together to deliver a new golden age for America. May God bless President Trump and the United States of America. So thank you to Congressman Nick Langworthy on that statement. I'm sure he was in attendance yesterday. Now let's take a little look at what some people are saying about the speech and just in general about the first few hours of the second Trump administration, of the 47th president's administration. CNN's Scott Jennings, who during the election did a great job, highlighted some very important facts. He does do a good job, Scott Jennings. He's the quote-unquote conservative on CNN, which you would also think isn't probably going to be that conservative, but he has been. He applauded Trump's speech. He said, "I thought this was an incredible speech. Honestly and truly, watching Donald Trump indict these gangsters to their faces while they had to sit right in front of him in that intimate setting in the rotunda for Republicans was remarkable." Very much why Republicans supported him in the first place. The idea that he could go, and I keep talking about the people behind him, but Scott Jennings makes a good point. There's a lot of people in front of him that very much he was indicting as gangsters. You would think it would be awkward giving that speech, but he obviously showed no concern, got up there and basically, well, spoke truth to power, which is what the media is supposed to love. But in this case, other than Scott Jennings, as a Republican on CNN, but the other media not loving that truth to power. Continuing with what Scott Jennings had to say, they had to sit there and take it just minutes after Biden, who we're looking at here, pardoned his entire family. I mean, it was glorious. By the way, I love the rotunda setting. I thought it was regal. I thought it was awesome. Yeah, what was your thoughts? I actually honestly did miss the outdoor inaugural address. But I understand what Scott Jennings is saying here. It did have a very regal look to it. It did feel very intimate, too, as well. Would you rather see it kept inside, or do you like the outside setting? I'll pose that question to you. Continuing with what Scott Jennings had to say. And listening to him talk about how he's going to exercise his power today reminded me that he is absolutely ascendant. He is at the apex of his political power right now. And you know, the promise of a new presidency is enormous. You get this power and you have influence. And the mandate is to change people's lives for the better and to restore American prestige. And he began to explain how he was going to do that immediately. The mandate's simple. It's economic relief. It's fix the immigration crisis, steer the country away from the cultural left, and restore American prestige. The speech hits several notes on that front. Jason Aldean, who was also a performer at some of these events surrounding the inaugural, said that Trump's new era of politics has arrived. Aldean, who is going to sing a 30-minute set at the Liberty Ball following Trump's inauguration, opened up about the big day for our country. Quote, "The last few years have been kind of really divisive and just a lot of stuff going on. And I just hope this is kind of the beginning of a new era for our country and kind of get us back on track." He noted that he does worry about the state of the country right now, especially as a parent. However, the musician believes that Donald Trump wants to do great things in this new era. I think the thing with President Trump is I think he wants to do great things for the American people and the country. And he's a guy that I feel like when he says something, he tries to get it done. He's not just telling you, I feel like a lot of times politicians will just tell you things just to make it sound good. And I feel like he's a guy that actually wants to get it done. Yes, and I would agree with him, and I think that's why the media is so upset. They expect him, and they expected this in 2016, they haven't learned their lesson, to be someone who makes a lot of campaign promises that they believe are outlandish, and they don't think he's going to actually do it. He gets in there, and it's Washington is normal, par for the course, and nothing really gets done. It's just a normal grandstanding around campaign time. Trump has never been that way, much to the media and the left's chagrin. He is someone that when he says he's going to do something, whether or not he can accomplish it, he's going to try to accomplish it. He wasn't that guy, the politician. He was a guy that kind of spoke my language. I just kind of put it in layman's terms for me a little bit. All right, that's Jason Aldean. We got to take another short break. We'll read your comments when we come back. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We will be right back. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Let's go to some viewer comments. Ken says, I heard that a Category 6 storm, Hurricane Trump, has formed in the Gulf of America and is headed to all 50 states. Thank you, Ken. A comment from a different viewer. Good morning, Frank. Well, hey, good morning. If the world was watching yesterday, they know that America won't be the pushover that we used to be. I'm so excited to see what the next 12 years will bring because I believe that it will go so well that J.D. Vance will lead after Trump. But maybe I'm not thinking clearly because I'm still nursing the hangover from my Hillary isn't president celebration. Oof, that's a long celebration. Comment from a different viewer. Hopefully our congressman will fight to fix the national debt. Thank you very much, because we read that comment from Congressman Langworthy. Michael Goodwin from the New York Post, who's been covering the whole election season, covering Trump for quite some time, said the old Washington advice that Americans should watch what a president does and not what he says needs an urgent update. Donald Trump intends to say and do the very same thing. This was the message and meaning of his unorthodox inauguration speech. He sat in the Oval Office before, and the 4 years he spent trying to get back there have given him plenty of time to decide what he wants to do. The result is that his 30-minute address wasn't one of those that is chock full of soaring rhetoric that reaches for the sky, but has a shelf life that can be measured in seconds and bears little resemblance to an actual agenda. Trump's speech is his battle plan. And I thought that was a really great way of putting it. A shorthand version would be, I told you many times what I'm going to do, so let's start doing it right now. While some commentators liken the plans he described to a typical State of the Union address, I believe it was much more operational than aspirational. Trump means business when he says from this moment on, America's decline is over, and that we will move with purpose and speed to bring back hope, prosperity, safety, and peace for citizens of every race, religion, color, and creed. For American citizens, January 20th, 2025 is Liberation Day. Nice words, and he immediately made a down payment on them by spending much of the day signing scores of executive orders and actions aimed at turning those promises into reality. Securing our borders is necessarily at the top of the list, which he has correctly described as an emergency. The rule of law was trashed and the immigration system rendered null and void because of all that Biden had done. And then there's and here's a bus ticket, a credit card, and a phone, and all those things we learned about. The ease masks the cost to taxpayers, both in money and in blood, because of the large criminal element that accepted Biden's offer. There's something else to consider about Trump. The 47th president is a different man from the 45th president. I think that's an important point. And you could see that yesterday. That's not to knock in 2017 when he was sworn in the first time. I know I keep saying 2016 because that was the election period, but you know what I mean. 2017 when he was physically sworn in, he had to learn the ropes on day one. Now he's had a lot of time to think on it, and you can see that confidence. Not that he didn't have confidence last time, but that extra level of confidence. 8 years ago, he was new to Washington, an unlikely winner and an outsider. Even he appeared to be in a state of shock. He subsequently cut a lonely figure in a town that fiercely protects its fiefdoms. And many Republicans, not to mention every Democrat and most of the deep state, were out to destroy him or at least hobble his movement of forgotten Americans. And we could talk about the mass protests. They're actually asking the question, the far left is asking a question. I saw a piece on it today. Are mass protests worth it anymore? Now that Trump was sworn in, are mass protests worth it? You even had some of his own team sabotaging him. He had crashed the party and had to pay the price, and we know all about this. I'm not going to go through every example. We'd be here all day, but now he's a changed man. Trump's second coming has been well documented, but something he has said Monday goes to the core of what has fueled his grit and stamina. Quote, just a few months ago in that beautiful Pennsylvania field, an assassin's bullet ripped through my ear. But I felt then, and believe even more so now, that my life was saved for a reason. I was saved by God to make America great again. That's the ultimate motivation and something he's expressed in various ways since that moment. Now it's clear he has reached an unshakable resolve about which policies could bring that success. If nothing else, Biden has helped point the way with his outrageous departure. The efforts to tie Trump's hands with executive orders on ocean drilling and similar measures were bad enough. But Biden's preemptive pardons of his entire family and those who ran the January 6th kangaroo court process are beyond the pale. One result is that Biden has justified virtually any and all pardons and commutations Trump decides to issue for January 6th defendants. To do otherwise is to accept a two-tiered system of justice, with a lenient one for well-connected Democrats and a harsher one for everyone else. To be sure, no matter what Trump does, the political forecast calls for rough sailing ahead, says Michael Goodwin. Lawsuits against the border actions already are being filed, and the GOP majority in the House is as small as it can possibly be. Nonetheless, the days of having a president who is sleepwalking America into one disaster after another are thankfully over. The nation now has the right president at the right time, and he is focused on the right policies. Godspeed to him. And Daniel McCarthy says really the breathtaking promises in Trump's address are just what the nation wants. We've heard this from viewers saying that this is that speech was full of hope, but not in the way that we've seen from other speeches in the past, which is a lot of grandiose language, but nothing really to be accomplished. Trump is signaling what he is going to accomplish. So the word that Daniel McCarthy uses is breathtaking. Trump is back with all the confidence of a man delivered from death for a purpose. Voters saved his political life and legacy by reelecting him in the face of every accusation and criminal charge against him. Trump has been given a second chance by God and the country alike, and his address left no doubt he intends to use it to transform America. Okay, we're going to read more of your comments. But the question was asked by The Guardian. As Trump is inaugurated, activists ask, is there any point in mass protests? There's one breaking local news story that I wanted to mention this morning. Just quickly, I know it goes off topic. We're going to get right back to the inauguration and what has been done so far in the last few hours. But we just got notice that Rick Davis, co-owner of Crystal Cleaners, is going to sell his Crystal Cleaners with that long tradition in the Southern Tier. He said, as you may or may not know, Crystal Cleaners is for sale. What you probably don't know is that due to a health situation in my family, I'll be unable to continue owning the business after the end of this year. The business would take very little time for a prospective buyer due to our dedicated staff. It's definitely priced right. I would help a prospective buyer. It would be a wonderful investment for someone who would like to own an established business and keep his or her current job. So I just want to pass that along. I know many people have seen the commercials. Many people have been using, well, it's been around since 1987, but have used Crystal Cleaners for many years. So that's kind of a breaking story that it is for sale. So we went really local there. We also went statewide and now mostly federal. So stay with us. We'll be right back, reading your comments when we come back. Yeah, we do have to take a break. So please stay with us. This is, Frankly Speaking, on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corn. Comment from a viewer. For Biden to now officially preemptive pardon Milley, Fauci, and the January 6th committee, there must be crimes that he believes they've committed that he's pardoning them from. It'll be interesting to see if this could actually stand up to a Supreme Court challenge, seeing that these people have not been investigated, charged, indicted, or convicted of any crime yet, because these are the most blanket pardons in presidential history. But continuing, he must believe the crimes were committed if he's issuing these pardons, and that speaks volumes. It is also more evidence of the establishment protecting itself and the corruption within our government. Thank you very much. This echoes a statement that a viewer had made at the beginning of the program, that Trump signing the slew of executive orders shows he's learned how to truly hit the ground running. That's from Dan McLaughlin, making the argument that this time it is different than when he had to learn. Now, listen, he came in like a tornado in 2017, don't get me wrong, but not knowing exactly how to handle it, not to know who was looking out for his best interests. That's why yesterday's media coverage was really interesting, because so many were talking about the loyalists in his cabinet as they were showing them in the background. And to me, that's interesting, because we have to accept the premise then that presidents don't pick people that are loyal to them, that Trump is the first person to pick people that are loyal to his agenda. It's a hard argument to make, but that's the argument that the media is trying to convince you anyway to believe. Proposals that were rushed out, half-baked, didn't make it through Congress or survive bad press or challenges in the courts back in 2017. Investigations hobbled Trump's White House. The wall didn't get built. Trump gave Paul Ryan his tax bill and Mitch McConnell his judges, but he wasn't prepared to put a lot of those of his own ideas into practice. Monday, and this may be an understatement, but Trump hit the ground running. He issued a battery of executive orders that his team had been preparing for months, expected to sign 100 or more within the first day. He even set up a desk in the Capital One Arena to do ceremony signings in front of the crowd. That's where he was throwing the pens. That was really pretty interesting, that kind of showmanship that he's so well known for. Most of the orders weren't secret, even if Democrats were so obsessed with the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025 that they ignored Trump's own Agenda 47 campaign promise. And that's something the media still does not understand about Trump, whether or not you agree with his policies or not, if you voted for him, you didn't. When he says something, he's going to try to do it. And so when they're shocked about the pardons and of the January 6th rioters, they shouldn't be surprised. But that was the talk really the whole day, even before he did it. That's all they wanted to focus on. Again, going back to the point that I continue to make, that the mainstream media, the legacy media, has not learned their lesson, because that January 6th, I even watched a clip from someone on the far left saying that January 6th, 4 years ago, over 4 years ago now, it's talked about so much that people said, all I want, and I wish I could remember who said it, all I want is to be able to afford groceries, to pay my bill, to put food on the table. So you keep talking about January 6th all you want, but I'm going to listen to the guy who's giving rallies talking about helping me and my pocketbook at the end of the day. But you could see with yesterday's coverage, talking about those pardons before they even happened, that's still their laser-like focus. If they think it's a winning team, I would point to, or a winning cause, I would say just look at November. Some of the things Trump discussed in his inaugural address will require support in Congress. But the executive orders are largely focused on things the president can do himself. That's a contrast to Joe Biden, who often ignored the president's job as commander-in-chief and top law enforcement officer, and instead used executive orders to do things that Congress or the states are supposed to decide, such as spending money on student loan forgiveness, stopping evictions, or mandating vaccines in the workplace. It all starts with immigration. There's no issue on which Trump has made a clear mandate and given a clear mandate to break with his predecessors. Declaring a national emergency at the border, Trump pledged not only to restore his previous successful policies, such as remain in Mexico, but also to deploy the military to the southern border and halt catch and release and refugee resettlements in the country. He'll target Mexican cartels by designating them as foreign terrorist organizations and use a law signed by John Adams to go after criminal gangs as alien enemies. Now, I'm not going to go through each individual because yesterday was a very busy day. We've already went through that at the beginning of the program. He's readier this time, they wrap up with. And at 78, the man who declared I was saved by God to make America great again is starting with a renewed sense of urgency. Liz Peek says that Donald Trump is our president and Democrats have no idea what to do. And you can see that in the coverage yesterday specifically, but also in kind of the awkwardness of some of the events where they were all together, which was interesting. And I think Ilhan Omar has a somewhat of a point here in a way. And you won't hear me say that very often. Ilhan Omar said people are more upset at performers and artists attending Trump's inaugural events, but not upset at all the politicians who told them he was a, quote, threat to democracy going to these events. They are not serious. Performers at least know they are there to perform and get paid. But these politicians who ran their mouth for 4 years and are now willing to be there and clap for him, that's who they should be mad at. They lied to you, and your criticism and anger should be rightfully directed at them. And that was the argument that many were making at a time when Obama, or even Biden, to an extent when he had that meeting with Trump, were so buddy-buddy and friendly with Trump after 4 years and 8 years of calling him a threat to democracy, as Morning Joe got so much criticism, Joe and Mika, for visiting with him after 4 years of calling him Hitler. And like so many people have said, would you want to get lunch with Hitler? Of course not. But so what you were saying wasn't true this whole time? The same with what Ilhan Omar is saying here. Forget about, the Carrie Underwoods of the world. They're there to perform for the country. Look at the politicians that were there yesterday that were clapping for Trump, or especially at the afternoon tea or whatever, not afternoon tea, the luncheon. The late luncheon, buddying up with the same people they had been calling horrible names for years. It shows a non-seriousness, like Ilhan Omar said. It shows that they weren't really telling you the truth all along. Also, no one should ask people who are performers and artists to be loyal to a party, because that's what dictatorships do. In a free country like ours, people should be able to support any party they want without having their livelihoods compromised. Wow, that's a very different mindset that her party has been pushing for decades now. So that's interesting. This is Ilhan Omar, far left, I think, avowed socialist. So raising a good point there. No one should lose a paycheck just because they support a party that's different than yours. Wow, did not expect that from her. Liz Peek said Donald Trump is our president and Democrats don't know what to do about it. As I mentioned, Democrats are in a free-for-all. They have no idea how to respond. Their party is currently earning its lowest approval ratings ever, and for good reason. And then they tie in the efforts of Joe Biden and others for the last 4 years. A former communications director for Kamala Harris says Democrats got to burn down our image. And maybe that's why Ilhan Omar making that statement yesterday. I see a lot of comments coming in. We're going to get to those in just a moment. We do have to take a short break talking more about what the president has accomplished. He sent out a email. His press secretary, or I don't know if secretary is the right word, but his press office sent out a email yesterday with all the promises made, promises kept. It's around 8 pages. We're not going to be able to get to all of it, but showing how much he accomplished in his first, not even full day in office. He, as so many people have been saying, hit the ground running. He was better prepared this time. You have the media controversy and so much talk this morning about the pardoning of the January 6th rioters. That's one of the bigger takeaways from the mainstream media. But when it comes to conservative supporters of Trump, there was a lot of major changes made yesterday, like getting out of the World Health Organization, the list, ending the EV mandate, opening up drilling. And he said much of this in his speech, as we've been saying all morning long. So let's take a short break. And when we come back, we'll read more of your comments, a couple other things to get to about yesterday's festivities and events. What were your thoughts? What were your thoughts about all the performers, and you can't even say which speech Trump gave. I mean, he had the inaugural address, then he had that second inaugural off-the-cuff speech that he gave. Then he had, did he talk at the luncheon? I can't remember. Then he went to the event at the arena, gave a speech, then gave a 45-minute press conference, and then went to the inaugural ball. So a lot of people saying that they were tired just watching it, let alone if you're a part of the Trump team. But we got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Wow, we have a lot of comments as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Thank you so much for joining us this morning and all the comments and all the waves. First up, Fred writes, acceptance of a pardon is an admission of guilt according to an 1886 Supreme Court decision. Civil prosecution is still an option, O.J. Simpson being one example. That's right, of course, losing the Heisman, right? There's a class action lawsuit representing J6 political hostages seeking reparations for the damages inflicted. Thank you very much. Comment from a different viewer. My last comment today, now we can say you're fired. Yes, Trump didn't, I didn't hear him say that yesterday. I know he was at the beginning of the morning, tweeted out that the White House senior living facility is now closed. So taking a dig at Biden right before the inauguration. Comment from a different viewer. Where is it? Totally fitting that Biden's last words leaving the stage were, "Do I go out this way?" That's a really good point. Thank you. Trump trusted the wrong people in his first go-round. And I don't believe, this is a comment from a different viewer. Trump trusted the wrong people in his first go-round, and I don't believe he will let that happen again. As for some of the deep pocket attendees that attended the inauguration, I think he hopefully has done that strategically as a watchman. It was interesting seeing some of the quote-unquote big names, some of the rich people there. You know, of course, you had the Musks, you had the Zuckerbergs, the Bezos. A lot of criticism of Jeff Bezos. Is it fiance or wife? I don't follow with that, what she was wearing. But yes, I think when they keep talking about loyalists, that's a good thing because Trump did not have that the last go around. He had a lot of people from inside Washington that he thought he could trust. It proved not to be the case. But he was not prepared to have everybody that he needed to do the job. And now, I don't know if this is just being a part of his email chain or if it was being on the press side of it. But to see the constant statements that were released over the since November, of who was going to be nominated for what, who was being hired for what, it was, sometimes you're talking dozens of emails with more than one name in each one of who he was announcing. So I think he was prepared and had the people vetted. So I agree. I know some are concerned about his connections with the Musks and the Zuckerbergs, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. Okay. Comment from a different viewer. It's too bad, and this is said sarcastically, if the Clintons, Kamala, Obama, and the rest were made to be uncomfortable. If they were, I think they have no feelings either way. But what President Trump has been put through for a decade is something that no one should have to go through, especially not in our country. In our own country. I hope they were uncomfortable, and I still hope they pay. We can't allow this to just be swept under the rug as it always is. If they're found guilty in the court of law, so be it. We're supposed to have a justice system and a right to a fair trial, and bottom line, we are innocent until proven guilty. But let's see what a jury thinks. In Trump's case, he was guilty before proven innocent. He has a right to fight back. Thank you, viewer. Comment from a different viewer. Trump's executive order. Oh, I forgot. I haven't mentioned this one yet. I'm so glad you brought this up. Trump's executive order for government workers returning to work is a win for the country. As a former government employee during the COVID mess, I saw firsthand how inefficient it was trying to communicate with those quote-unquote working from home. For many, with a sweet gig like this, there would never be a need to retire. New faces with new perspectives are good. Yeah, fresh blood. I agree. And I think that, to Doge's point, I know Musk said it. Oh, and yeah, did you see Ramaswamy's out of Doge now? Because he's thinking about running for elected office. But what was said early on is once you demand that they come back to work and it's no more either hybrid work from home or just outright work from home, that will cause a lot of people to naturally quit their job because they probably knew they weren't really doing their job or they just don't want to go back into work, and fine. But that'll make the efficiency part of this and getting rid of some non-essential employees very easy because they'll do it on their own. So yes, you raise a very, very good point. That was another big takeaway from yesterday. Going back to some media coverage of this, Rachel Maddow and Joy Reid were triggered by the Trump administration, asking the question, how is this happening in America? That's what Rachel Maddow asked at the site of Department of Homeland Security nominee Kristi Noem being seated next to Apple CEO Tim Cook. How is this happening? Why are people with tons of money on the dais with cabinet nominees and family members? She asked. Joy Reid said, I believe that the idea of the institutions, which the Bidens clearly believe in, have been completely exposed by this election. The far-left commentator who encouraged liberals to skip Thanksgiving dinner with their Trump-supporting relatives laced into Trump after Hayes attempted to strike a less combative tone, saying he was rooting for the newly anointed commander-in-chief to succeed despite ideological differences. Reid responded by rattling off a list of Trump's policy positions that helped secure his historic 2024 election victory as wiping away the civic memory of Washington, D.C. The promises on the table are 200-some odd executive actions. An attempt to get rid of birthright citizenship, an attempt to do mass deportation. This is supposed to be the great Christian president who is promising to attack immigrants and trans people who are already vulnerable. These are some of the executive orders. The cruelty is the point of this coming administration. She also dipped back into the January 6th well, calling it a coup. We're talking about an attempt to portray this peaceful transfer of power with people who were convicted in the insurrection, attending with the person who fomented the coup, being sworn in as president, essentially a delay in the completion of the insurrection, the idea that the institutions will hold. She even invoked the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., saying America just had a content of their character election. And the person didn't get elected due to the content of their character, to use the phrase. The only thing that some folks on the right remember about Dr. King, you go down the list of the people, it's no longer content of the character. Now it's people like Trump likes to see on television. Okay. CNN contributor Tim Naftal said Trump has decided to make good on his promise to be a dictator on day one. This is a signal on the far right in the world that America is now going to play the game the way the other far right countries play, which is what we want to take, which means for the first time since World War II, we are no longer an indispensable nation. If we follow through with the rhetoric in the inauguration, we have become an imperialist nation. And that was in reference to Trump saying he was going to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. How are we doing on time? Oh, got to take our last break. Then we're going to rush through all the topics we haven't covered, get those last minute comments in, and we will be right back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning, wrapping up today's edition. And by the way, thank you for all the comments. What great discussions this morning. Really appreciate it. One last comment. I heard, this is Fred, I heard but did not witness that Donald did a little Trump dance as the helicopter lifted off. Any confirmation? I did not see that. But there was a lot of Trump dancing yesterday when he cut into that cake that was made in the shape of Air Force One, and he had that big sword and he was dancing to the YMCA. That's become a very interesting point, or an interesting, I don't know what the word, fad when it comes to Trump. Now, I mentioned earlier, and I just wanted to give you some more information on it. Vivek Ramaswamy won't serve as the co-leader in Trump's Doge initiative. Even though he played a critical role in helping to create it, the transition team said. He has an interest in running for governor of Ohio, and that's the reason he's departing the committee tasked with exploring ways to trim the size of the federal government. Quote, he intends to run for elected office soon, which requires him to remain outside of DOGE. Based on the structure that we announced today, we thank him immensely for his contribution over the last 2 months and expect him to play a vital role in making America great again. Now, as we wrap up our discussion on the inauguration, again, pointing to the fact that the media has not learned the lesson, MSNBC host Chris Hayes said that Trump's inaugural address was, quote, a cult leader taking a mulligan and telling you paradise is around the corner again. That's Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Nicole Wallace on MSNBC said that Trump is issuing a challenge to the Constitution. I guess we'll start here. Buckle up. The country and the world are now experiencing what this is like. The first hours of the second Trump presidency happening right now. Donald Trump is at the U.S. Capitol. Soon he will head to that rally inside Capital One Arena. Not really. It was a long hour, 4 hours after that. 3. It's happening in the place of the inaugural parade because of the bitterly cold temperatures. Donald Trump is expected to sign an order ending birthright citizenship for children of undocumented immigrants. It will apply to children born to undocumented parents going forward, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't mean to skip your comment, Ken. Remember, the Biden administration updated most government workers' contracts to allow them to work from home for the next 5 years. This is a court battle in the making. It is a court battle in the making, though specifically, correct me if I'm wrong, the one that made the most news, and it might have been other contracts, was specifically with the IRS, if I'm not mistaken. So there's obviously other organizations that may directly be affected by this, and then others that will have to take it to court. I'm sorry, there's so many comments coming in, we just don't have time for them. What this all boils down to is America has lost its backbone now. We are getting it back. Interesting. All right. Liz Cheney slammed Trump's inaugural speech after Biden hands her a preemptive pardon. There are a lot of make-believe stories made up. Oh, really? A lot of make-believe stories made up? That's an interesting way of putting that, as compared to those non-made-up make-believe stories. So rather than suffer the wrath like the story with Nancy Pelosi, I offered her 10,000 soldiers. She knows it, said Trump. But going on after this. Think it's 100. Well, I don't want to go through the whole thing. January 6 pardons is obscene, a grotesque display of Trump's power as president, according to Adam Schiff. Again, they never expected him to make good on his promises. Oh, finally, this was a headline from CNN. Trump's sweeping agenda injects uncertainty into a healthy economy. We'll end on that note. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for all the comments. Thanks for everybody who joined us. Join us tomorrow morning starting at 6 for Frankly Speaking, only on Big Fox. I look forward to it already.